Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling? I hope that you have been enjoying the previous episode of this series. I hope that inshallah tonight you are ready, you are feeling well, and tonight we can have a good discussion together on a very important topic when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to life, and when it comes to how to live well. If you remember, the philosophy of this series called Spiritual Sundays was that we learn many things in life. We learn how to cook, we learn how to draw, we learn how to be a teacher, how to be a sheikh. So many different things in life. We receive teachings, we receive education, and so we become good at them. We become a better teacher if that's who we are. If we are a reciter, with practice, with lessons, we become a better reciter. If we're a businessman, if we're a businesswoman, if we are a lawyer, if we are in whatever area of life that we are, with trainings, with teachings, we become better. But the point of this session is not about these specific areas of life, but life itself. We may learn to be a sheikh, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, but we don't get enough trainings on how to be a human being, how to live a life. And so we decided in this series to focus on that, to focus on how can we live our life better so that we don't need to hope or wish for having peace, for having, a joyful life. So the topic for tonight is responsibility and taking control of life. This is one area, one point, one topic that can greatly impact the way we live, our experience of life, and inshallah, I hope that just by thinking about it, just by discussing it between us, you will see in your life that things are improving. It's a very powerful topic. When I say responsibility, what do I mean? By responsibility, I mean something very specific, and that is responsibility, the ability to respond. This is the topic for tonight, okay? And it's very important to bear this in mind, because if we don't pay attention to this, you may have questions as we go along. Because one of the things I want to say is that we have to take full responsibility for all areas of our life. We have to take full responsibility for how we feel. Now, this may initially seem a little bit difficult, a little bit tough, a little bit strange. Why? Because for us, the word responsibility is tied to so many other concepts. So if, for example, a person is hurt and I tell that person, or I tell myself, let's say I'm hurt, and then someone comes and tells me, Java, you are responsible for making sure that you heal this feeling of hurt and you get better. You're responsible for that you're hurt. Now, if we, for example, tie the concept of responsibility to blame, then this may be difficult to understand. Well, I didn't cause the hurt to myself. Someone else caused it. That person said something. So from very early on, I want to say that when I say I'm responsible for making myself feel better, I don't mean that I am to be blamed for what happened to me. No, we are taking the concept of blame out of responsibility. So all I mean by the fact that if I am hurt, I am responsible for it, is that I should have the ability to respond to this. Not that I caused it, not that I am to be blamed for it, no. Only that I am responsible for dealing with it. And if you look at it this way, you see that to claim responsibility for something not only is not a bad thing, not only it's not a judgment, it's not an attack on us, but it's also very empowering. Because if I say responsibility is to attain the ability to respond, it means that I am giving myself some agency. I am not a victim of what's happening in my life. Of course, so many people may cause hurt to me. They may have caused the situation that I need to deal with right now. But when I say let's take responsibility for it, I mean that let's claim the ability for ourselves to respond to the situation. Okay? Now, a lot of the times, if we don't do that, if we don't want to take responsibility, all we end up doing is reacting to the situation. So we lose control, right? Something happens to us, we are dealt a card, we're given a situation, we don't want to take responsibility for it, so the first thing, we may blame others, and we may even do so rightly, okay? We may even correctly say, yes, that person is to be blamed for this situation. Or we may express our anger or complaint. But if this is all that we do, we are depriving ourselves of the ability to respond, the ability to decide for our own life. So initially, it may be soothing, it may be liberating not to feel responsible for a situation, but all it means at the end of the day is that we are taking away the control of our life and giving it to the situations that we are given. So all I mean when I say we need to be responsible for how we feel, what our life looks like, is that let's claim and attain the ability for ourselves to respond to how we feel to the situations we're given. And again, as I said, I need to keep repeating this because I know that immediately a person may say, but I didn't do this to myself. I know responsibility is not blaming, is not who caused it. Okay. Let me give you an example so that this becomes clear. Imagine we're walking in a street and we see there's a person on the floor, on the ground, who's injured, seems like he's bleeding, very hurt. Now, do we feel responsible for that or not? If a person says, no, I'm not responsible for that, what does it mean? It means that I am limiting the area of my life, right? I am limiting it. I am saying my control over life, over this world, does not include what's happening over there. No, I am not responsible for that. That has nothing to do with me. Now, why are we usually doing this? Because we think to accept responsibility means to take blame. But in this example, it is very obvious that we did not cause it. We did not injure that person. That must have happened before we even got there. So when I say let's claim responsibility, it means that let us not limit ourselves, our life. Let us not exclude what is happening right next to us from our experience of life. Because by doing that, we are saying that I am limited. What happened around there has nothing to do with me. So in other words, you're limiting your life. You're not allowing the beautiful force of life which is within you to express itself in something which is happening just a little bit over there next to you. Okay? And every area of life what we don't take responsibility for, we are basically limiting ourselves. If I say I'm not responsible for how this person feels, or for what's happening there, or for what my sibling, what my partner, all of these things, wherever we don't feel responsible for, it means that we are saying I have no power, no control, no ability to respond to that situation. And so we become little and little and little. The life that we are, the force that our life is, becomes limited and limited. So many things become excluded of our experience of this world. Now, let's go back to our example. We're walking in a street. We see a person injured on the ground, hurt, bleeding. When I say we should feel responsible, what do I mean? What do I mean that we need to claim the ability to respond to what's happening around us? Well, the very important thing is that you may say, okay, how do I respond? I'm not a doctor. I don't know what to do. So this is a very good point. And now it allows me to give the second distinction, that responsibility does not equal capability. So initially I said responsibility does not mean blame or who caused it, okay? The fact that you're responsible doesn't mean that you injured that person, not at all. It's just the ability to respond. Now the second distinction is this. To claim responsibility, to feel responsible towards something doesn't necessarily mean that you are capable to resolve the situation. So, based on our ability, based on our capability, we can choose the appropriate level of action in that situation. Let's say I'm a trained medic. Well, if I see there's a person injured and I have training, my response, if I want to not be careless, if I don't want to limit my life, would be to go and see, maybe if I have the medical training, if I'm qualified, I can check this person. You know, if there's anything urgent that needs to be done, I'll perform the procedure. But maybe I'm not a medic, like me, I'm not a medic. Well, if I don't have that capability, my response would be something else. My response may be that let's call an ambulance. That's another response. You call an ambulance. Right? Let's say you see that another person is calling for the ambulance. Still doesn't mean that we shouldn't feel responsible. The very least thing I can do is, okay, someone else is, there's another medic there, there's another person calling for ambulance, but I still feel responsible. At the very least, in my heart, I can send prayers, right? I send prayers that may this person who's injured heals and gets cured and gets to the hospital on time, and whatever is happening gets resolved. At the very least, I can have that prayer in my heart. And just by that, all it took is just send some prayer, have an intentions, right? May this thing get solved with the least amount of suffering. Just by doing this, I claimed for myself the ability to respond, to express myself, to express my life. And just by doing that, the being that you are, the beautiful soul that you are, the beautiful life force that you are expanded. If before your life only allowed itself to express itself here, now you expanded your life. You gave it the opportunity and the ability to express itself in a wider situation. So you just expanded your life. Very literally speaking, even. So this is what I mean by attaining for ourselves the ability to respond. And again, it does not mean the capability. Maybe we want to respond and we do respond, but it may not be the response that solves it. Maybe we just have a wish, a prayer, but that's still good. Now, we may even choose, with regard to a certain incident, that right now I decide not to act I decide not to do anything with regards to this issue right now. But even that is a response, right? Maybe, for example, you see that you have a couple friend, and they're in a fight right now, in an argument. But okay, now, do you want to feel responsible or not? You may say, I'm not responsible. They're fighting. It's their problem, right? Okay, that's one attitude. But no, we want to feel responsible. I feel responsible for this fight. Not that I'm blamed for it, no, but I want to keep the ability to respond to what's happening next to me. If my friends, a couple, are fighting, I am responsible. I want to keep the ability to respond to the situation. But maybe I look at the argument and see that the best response I can do right now is to remain silent. Because I feel like this argument, if I want to intrude, if I want to say something, it would just worsen the situation. So a response could be not to do anything. But as long as that is a choice, as long as you decide, I want to be responsible, and the response I want to give is to remain silent, right? As long as you do this, it's a very different situation. You're empowering yourself. You're taking control of life, of what's happening around you, and how you wish to respond to it. So when you look at it this way, then a question would be, what are the things you want to feel responsible towards? Let's say there's a crisis happening in a different country. Are you responsible for it or not? Well, if you say, no, I didn't do it. I didn't cause that issue. See, again, that's the previous mentality. So the responsibility doesn't mean that you caused it. Doesn't mean that you're to be blamed for it. It's just a question. Do you wish to respond to it or not? Do you want the life that you are to take a response with regards to what's happening? And again, we said, it doesn't mean capability. It doesn't mean that go and solve it. Stop your life and go. No, sometimes a responsibility could be just to send a prayer, to feel a certain way towards something. So I'm going to ask you again, there's a crisis happening in a different country. Are you responsible for it or not? Do you want to be responsible for it or not? If you say no, it means that I want to limit my life. The life that I am, I'm going to create a wall. What's happening in that country does not relate me. My life ends there. I'm not going to respond to that. The person I am, the soul that I am, has nothing to do with that. But if you say, yes, I feel responsible, all you're saying is that, you know what, I do not want to limit the expression of myself. No, I want to respond to everything that's happening in that country. And maybe at this point, all that I can do is to send prayers, but at least I feel responsible. Because I don't want to feel like that is out of my experience. That is excluded from the person I am. I don't want to limit myself like that. Okay. Now the question would be this. Is there anything happening in this world that we are not responsible for? Is there any area in this world that you look at and you say, I don't want to have the ability to respond to that? Is there such an area? And the answer that I hope we can all give right now is that no. Let me give another example to make this clear. Imagine you have a child who lives with you in the same house. If I ask you, are you responsible for the well-being of that child? You say yes. Now if I say, okay, imagine your child is on a school trip, went to a different country. Are you responsible for it? You say yes. But let me tell you something else. Your child grew up, married, became independent, lived to a different continent, and is living with his wife or with his own family, has got children, and can really take care of himself. Now, are you responsible for it or not? You say, yes, I feel responsible. What does that mean? It means that even though my son is in a different continent, can take care of itself, I still want to have the ability to care, to respond to what my child is going through. Of course, I may not be able to do anything, or my son or my daughter may be much stronger than me right now to take care of himself or herself. But still, do I want to keep the ability to at least pray? Yes. What does that show you? That your responsibility does not have limit. Your child was in the same house, you felt responsible. Your child went to a different country, you still kept the ability to respond. There is no limit, there is no range to your responsibility. That your child went to a different continent, your ability to respond still went there. There is no geographical bound to the ability of our life to respond to what's happening. Even if, God forbid, our child or a family member passes away, even after they pass away, don't you still want to keep the ability to respond? Don't we, for example, give sadaqah or recite Quran for our loved ones who've passed away? What does that mean? It means that we still feel responsible. And it doesn't mean that we caused the situation they are in, or we are to blame for what they did, or that we have necessarily the capability to solve the situation. No, but we want to attain the ability to respond. We want to care. We don't want that part of the universe to be excluded from our experience of life. And we see with these examples that our ability to respond does not have geographical bounds. Even if a person is in a different country, we care. Even after they leave this world, we still care. And that just shows us that our ability to respond has no limit. And wherever we limit it, we are limiting ourselves. There's no geographical bound, right? So this is why I said, when you look at it this way, you realize, oh wow, I want to feel responsible for everything that's happening in this universe. Because the life that I am, the soul that I am, is unlimited, is infinite, and its care is infinite. And every time I limit that care, I exclude something from that care, I'm limiting myself, and I am letting go of my power. I am letting go of the control. So by feeling responsible, by attaining the ability to respond, we empower ourselves. We take control of our life to the degree that we can. Okay. Now, all of this was to show what is this concept of responsibility. And of course, inshallah, later on, we can talk about how to feel responsible for the whole world. What does that mean? What is the link between this and religion? Because I want to tell you that a very great part of spiritual growth is to largen the circle of people you care about. Have you heard of this dua? Allahumma aghni kulla faqir. Allahumma ashbi' kulla ja'i'. Right? Allahumma ashfi kulla marid. It means, oh God, cure every ill person. Oh God, anyone in the situation of poverty, bring them out. Allahumma adkhil ala ahl al-qubur as-surur. All the people who are passed away, God, make them happy. Now, the Imam who told us to recite this dua, it didn't mean that just ask God for these things. He was teaching us a lesson that the circle of your responsibility has to be this large, that it includes every single person on this world, even every single soul who passed away. Allahumma adkhil ala ahl al-qubur as-surur. Every single person who passed away, good or bad, my religion or not my religion, whatever person, I feel responsible for all of them. Every single poor person in this world, I feel responsible. Every single person with an illness, I feel responsible. I'm responsible for all of that. And again, it doesn't mean that I have to solve it. No, it doesn't mean that I caused it. No, it's just that I want to have the ability to care, to respond, to feel like I'm part of it. So maybe all I can do at a certain point is to pray, right? And that's still responsibility. Okay, inshallah we'll talk about this in another session. Tonight what I wanted to focus on mainly is, before we think so big and all of that, let us at least take responsibility for how we feel. Okay? Now it's very great, very grand, very beautiful. Take responsibility for everyone in this world to keep the ability to respond. But before we go all of there, let us at least start with feeling responsible for how we feel, for our own well-being, for the issues that we have. Now, if we look at our lives, we see that there are so many things that take our peace of mind, take our happiness away from us. Maybe we have a person who broke our heart. Maybe we had a partner who ended the relationship in a very ugly manner and left a wound. Maybe we had a friend who broke our heart. We're all hurt in some form or another, right? And all of these things hurt us. All of these things affect us, take our peace away. And sometimes maybe it's not a person, maybe it's a society, maybe it's the country we're living in, maybe it's just the way life is. We were given a bad situation. So when we look at why we are not happy, why is it that we don't feel okay? We have a list of reasons why, right? Well, my parents never believed in me, for example, a person may say. Or, you know what, I was with this person, with this partner, she left me hurt, rejected, with low self-esteem. I had a friend who broke my heart. After 9 years of friendship, did this, Well, or another person may say, I have an illness. This illness is taking my joy away from me. So much pain. It doesn't allow me to enjoy life. Another person may say, well, I was working. I suddenly got fired. And this is really, affecting me. So when we ask ourselves, why are we not feeling well? We give a list of reasons. It either involves people who did things to us, who hurt us, who left a wound, who broke our heart, or an illness, or life situations, or our bosses at work. Now, how can we link this to the issue of responsibility? I want to say that it is very true that people do hurt us. Life can really challenge us. But despite all of that, I want to invite us to take responsibility for how we feel. Now, I have said so many times tonight that responsibility does not mean we are to be blamed or that we caused the situation. All it means is the ability to respond. So, let's say you have a friend who really, really hurt you, broke your heart, and I know how terrible that can feel. Now, do you feel responsible for making sure do you feel responsible for this situation or not? If you say no, it means that you can no longer have control of your life. Because when you don't feel responsible, you're saying, I don't have the ability to respond. And if you don't respond, what happens? Well, life decides. So when I say let's feel responsible, I mean, no matter who caused it. Now it is on to us to respond to this, to fix this. Again, as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have the capability, but at least we need to start. Okay? Now, usually, this is the place where it gets hard. In the example of the person in the ground who was bleeding, because we could easily see that we are not to be blamed for it, it was easier to accept. But sometimes when I tell people that, you know what, if someone broke your heart, if someone really hurt you, now you are responsible to feel better, they immediately feel defensive. They don't want to accept it. They're like, no, that person has to come and apologize. That person did this to me. They need to come and say that what they did was wrong. And I will not be calm. I will not be happy as long as they don't do that. I really understand. I get you. What they did was wrong. And I really hope that they come and apologize. But let's say they're not coming to apologize right now. Do you want to take the ability to respond away from yourself? Do you want to remain hurt all this time, hoping that maybe one day they'll come to apologize? So when it comes to emotional hurt, or when someone really broke our heart or did something to us, it just feels so weird, so unfair to feel responsible for our well-being. Right? A lot of the times when I tell people that you have to let go of what this person did to you, they're like, why? Why? No, I don't want to do this for them. I don't want to forgive them. What they did was wrong. They hurt me. And I'm like, yes, that is true. But look what happens when you don't let go, when you don't feel responsible for your own well-being. If I ask you, why are you upset? And you say, because that person hurt me, that means that you are letting go of being able to control your life, your well-being. Let me give you an example to make this clear. Imagine you were driving in a road, you were following the speed guidelines, you're going very carefully, very beautifully, and suddenly there's a drunk driver. A person who doesn't even have a driving license is drunk as well, driving, and suddenly comes and hits you. Hits you, terrible accident, you get super hurt, physically hurt. Now, my question is this: what do you do in this situation? What is the first thing that you should be doing? Is it that you would think, this person, how dare they hit my car? This idiot, this irresponsible person, drinking and driving without driving license, how dare they? Is that our top priority? Or is our top priority that my head is bleeding and I want to feel responsible for this? If my head is bleeding, the first thing is, let me call an ambulance. Let me stop the bleeding. Let me make sure I'm fine, right? So in that situation, doesn't it make sense to say that you are responsible to make sure you feel well? Fair enough. After you went to hospital, after you dealt with the injury, we made sure nothing is happening to you, it doesn't lead to a brain damage, then we'll deal with that driver. You can even file a complaint. They'll have to answer for it. They may even be taken to the court. You do all of that. But at that moment, when you are bleeding, shouldn't you feel responsible to stop that? Let me make it easier to understand. Imagine it wasn't you who got hurt. It was your child. You were driving, God forbid, a drunk driver hit your car, you see your child next to you bleeding. Don't you feel responsible? Yes. What do? What is the first priority? Let me make sure my child gets to hospital. Let me heal the wound. Let me take her to a doctor, take him to a doctor, and then we'll deal with the driver. So when I say, if someone hurt you, if someone hurt me, I should feel responsible, that's what I'm saying. In the case of a physical wound, we understand that if my head is bleeding, this should stop. But sometimes when our heart is bleeding, when our emotions are bleeding, we can't see it as clearly. But it's the same thing. Yes, what that person did to us was wrong. But there is no point in waiting for them to come and apologize. It would be amazing if they come. But let's say they're not coming. Should we let go? Should we allow this wound in our heart to keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding? Or should we feel responsible and take action? Okay? So now this is what I mean when I say we should feel responsible for our own well-being, for how we feel. Of course, it doesn't mean we are blamed for our situation. We caused it, but we need to keep the ability to respond. And so a lot of the times when I tell people you should forgive someone, you should let go, it's not because, for example, I want to do that person a favor. It's for you. The one who forgives is letting go of the wound. Because when it comes to the wounds of the heart, when it comes to emotional wounds, as long as you don't forgive, you are carrying the dirt that that person caused and giving them every day the power to keep hurting you and hurting you more. So forgiving is not something you do for others, even though it helps them as well. But forgiving is something we do for ourselves, is the ability to respond, is to take control of our life, is to take away the power from others to hurt us, right? Because when we don't do that, we are not in control of our life. And that is why most of us, our happiness is dependent on life situations, on how others treat us, on what happens that day. Because we haven't felt responsible, we haven't took control, so we feel good if others treat us well. If they don't, immediately we lose it. We haven't learned how to make sure we feel all right no matter what happens outside. Because slowly, as you practice feeling responsible for how you feel inside, it reaches a level where inside of you, your feelings, your emotions become fully under your control. With regards to the outside world, we said sometimes you may be able to fix it, sometimes not, right? Maybe it's a crisis in another country, I can't solve it right now. So my responsibility would be to maybe pray, maybe to educate, maybe to raise awareness. So with the outside world, sometimes my responsibility might respond, leads to success, sometimes it doesn't. But inside world, what I feel, do I have peace or not? Do I feel blissful or not? Do I feel joyful or not? Do I feel calm or not? You can reach a level where 100% it's in your control. But the first step is to claim responsibility. Because when all we are is a victim to our situation, even if it's rightly so, even if others really hurt us, but if that's all we are, if we are not claiming control, then our well-being depends on how they treat us. But the more we feel responsible, the more we take control, our well-being is less and less dependent on others and more in our own hands. And we'll reach a level where no matter what others do, they can never hurt us. And of course, it may take time for us to get there, but isn't it a beautiful goal to have? To reach a level where no matter what they do, it wouldn't hurt us? And we have so many examples because we're short in time. I don't want to go into them, but we've had so many people that someone may even swear at them. Right now, if we go, for example, to a supermarket and someone speaks a little bit rudely to us, maybe for a few hours we feel upset. And if someone asks you, why are you upset? You're like, you know what? I was out. This guy spoke like this to me. Said something even, for example, rude to me, offensive to me. Right? So this person who even after 3 hours with one sentence has lost his or her well-being, it's a victim to the situation. But if he or she feels responsible for their well-being, they say, okay, that person said that, but do I want to carry their dirt, their rudeness, their offense 3 hours? They may have even forgotten, but I am keep repeating it. You know, sometimes we become the propaganda, the media for people's wrong actions. A person says something rude and we keep retweeting it in ourselves. We keep sharing it in ourselves, keep thinking about it. But when you feel responsible, yes, someone said something. Okay, I'm not going to allow my well-being to be decided by this. I'm going to feel responsible. I decide how I feel. Okay? Slowly we can get to a place where insight is fully in our own control. Okay. Now I think it's good to maybe open up and inshallah answer a few questions. And of course there's still so much more to discuss with this topic, but inshallah maybe we can do that in the other session. So right now, if you have any questions, please let me know and I'm at your service. There is also a little bit of delay, so maybe by the time the questions come, it takes maybe 10-20 seconds sometimes. Also, you know that if you want to send an anonymous question, you know, there's this also option somewhere here next to the comment section. There's a question mark if you want to ask an anonymous question. That option is available there as well. And if you don't have question, well, that's fine too. Inshallah. I'll just wait a few seconds to make sure all is good. How is everyone feeling, by the way? Which dua do you recommend us to say? You mean with regards to responsibility? I'm not sure exactly dua for what. Because for each aspect of this, a different dua can help. Okay. So for example, if you want to slowly grow the circle of your responsibility, well, that beautiful dua, Allahumma aghni kulla faqir, Allahumma adkhil ala ahl al-qubur as-surur, just to reflect on that, like what was the Imam teaching us when the Imam taught us this? That's a beautiful dua. A lot of the times we just read it, but reflecting on that dua, I think would be beautiful, especially for realizing that we really need to grow the circle of our responsibility. How can we control our thoughts? Sometimes the thought is so powerful, it can take control of your subconscious, definitely. So inshallah, this is a very important topic, okay? What to do with our thoughts, what to do with intrusive thoughts which are so powerful, they keep coming, and sometimes we feel like they're taking control. Inshallah, maybe we'll have one session to fully talk about this. It requires a lot of discussion. But because I don't want to leave this question unanswered, I'll say two things. There is one thing to do at that moment, and there are things that we need to do generally. Okay? What do I mean by this? Let's say someone says, I'm playing football, and immediately after a few minutes of running, my heart is beating so quickly, and I get so tired. What should I do? Okay? So there are two things. One thing that you need to do is at that moment, how to deal with it when you feel the heart is beating too much and you're tired. But there are another set of things that you should have done before the match or before the next match. So do some cardio exercises, do certain things so that this wouldn't happen, right? So there are two things: certain instructions for that moment and certain instructions to have always with us in life so that this wouldn't even happen. Okay, what to do in that moment? Now, everyone, of course, has learned a way to deal with intrusive thoughts. Some people try to suppress it. Some people express it in anger. Some people in blame. Some people in feeling upset, right? So if you feel like it's really affecting your well-being at that moment, okay, if it's because it can be anything, I don't know what it is, and if you've learned a technique to deal with it, do that at that moment. But one thing which would help you slowly improve is try and be there when it's happening, okay? Because what I mean by be there, see, a lot of the time something happens to us and we get immediately lost in that event. Thoughts come, we get lost in thoughts. All that's happening in our subjective experience are these thoughts. Like, let me give you an example. If it's an anxiety about an event, let's say you're going to a meeting and you're feeling anxious about it. If all that is happening are these thoughts, usually they say you're not there. So all that is happening in your subjective experience are these thoughts. Oh my God, if I go there, if I don't know what to say, if I embarrass myself, if I don't look good, if I look bad. So it means that we're not there. All that is there are the thoughts. So they say, try to be there when this happens. What does that mean? These thoughts are there, but you are from a different level aware of the thoughts. So you see that I am anxious, right? This is very different to being lost in the cloud of anxiety. So the thoughts are still there, but you are there too. So it's not that anxiety is here, it's that I am anxious. I feel the anxiety. And that is what I mean by be there. Okay? Slowly, as you practice this, I say, you know what? I'm having an anxiety attack, but I'm there. I'm seeing it. These thoughts are coming. Okay? Now, when you are there, when you're not lost in the thoughts, that would enable you to take a measure. Okay? There are a few things that you can do immediately which would help you. One of them, for example, is take very deep breaths. Okay? Take deep breaths. Because what you need to do is to communicate to your body that things are going to be okay. Things are fine. We are safe. Now, it's not going to help you if you try to tell your brain that things are okay. Because our body doesn't get the message from our thoughts immediately. So if anxiety is there, the first step we said is to just you be there too. Don't get lost in it. See that anxiety is there. Yes, I am having an anxiety attack, but I'm here. Now, initially it may take you a long time just to practice this. So, but after you manage to do this, then the next level would be, okay, I'm here and I want to take an action. So one action you can take is to tell your body that we are safe, okay? Not your mind, because you can never convince your mind, but you can convince your body that we are safe. So take deep breaths. What happens is that when we are having these anxiety attacks, the body suddenly goes in a panic mode, right? The way the body feels is like, imagine a lion is chasing us. But when you take deep breaths, no one would take deep breaths when a lion is attacking them. So the body suddenly feels safe. If I was in danger, the body feels. If I was in danger, this wouldn't happen. So this would be a good signal to tell your body that I'm feeling fine. There are other techniques as well. If there's a person there that you love and trust, being next to them, holding their hand maybe, asking them, can you hold my hand? That physical touch of a person that you love and trust, that can also make your body feel safe. There are other techniques as well which you need to learn. Maybe inshallah later on we can talk about them. How to communicate with your body that you're feeling fine. Another thing which would help you is to feel, don't look at what's happening at a mental level. Don't get lost in thoughts. Try and keep coming back to the body. Okay? If you're having an anxiety, see how does it feel in your body? Instead of dealing with it in the mind, come to the body. The more you come to the body, the easier it becomes, and it loses its power, that episode. Okay? So look for the sensations in your body. What does this anxiety feel like in my body? Okay? And practice that. Like, okay, my heart is beating. So this is what it. And immediately what this does is that it frees you from wrestling with the thoughts, but experiencing it in your body. See, my heart is beating. My chest is getting tighter, right? So come to your body. Now, these are some of the things that we do at that very moment, okay? When the anxiety has already happened. Now, let's say we dealt with it either in this way, we held someone's hand, we took deep breaths, or we did, for example, a different technique. What do we do afterwards? Why did this even happen to us? See, usually when an intrusive thought like this comes, it means that there is an issue that we need to deal with. Now, this could be a serious trauma, like being abused in childhood, being bullied, being hurt, and all the way till to having a need not being met. Let's say you were a child and you felt abandoned or bullied, or for whatever reason. Usually an intrusive thought is the way these issues we have are communicating with us. So what we need to do is find the root of this and heal it. And of course, there are so many ways to deal with this. And inshallah, one day I'll talk about this. Of course, sometimes we may need to ask for a therapist. There are certain issues that we may not be able to heal on ourselves. So we need to ask for professional help. But there are certain things that just to know how to deal with this trauma, you may be able to heal it yourself. So inshallah, one session we'll talk about that. Maybe next week we can talk about that, okay? So in that moment, be there, take deep breaths, hold someone's hand if they're available, feel the sensations in your body, and after it's done, look for the root of that intrusive thoughts. And usually the thoughts themselves will guide you on why you're having this, okay? If it's anxiety attack, it goes back to an episode where we formed a belief about the world. If it's a self-esteem issue, if it's an anger, whatever it is, we go back and we find the root of it and we heal that. Once the root is healed, we will no longer experience these intrusive thoughts. Because these thoughts, by the way, another thing, they're not bad. It's very difficult. I know, it's very difficult. It's very annoying. It's very suffocating sometimes. But know that the reason your mind is doing this to you, at some point, this was the way it had to protect you. The way your mind tried to protect you at some point was to make you scared or make you feel a certain way or bring certain thoughts, because it would distract you from something else, or because, in other words, this was the only way it knew how to protect you. That was the source of it. So all now it's doing by keep coming back is to tell you this is how I'm feeling. That wound is getting triggered. So by going and healing that wound, the issue is solved from its root, so the intrusive thoughts wouldn't come. Okay, let's see if we have other questions. Are there steps to take to control our anger? Definitely, definitely. With anger is very similar to this. So we have two levels of dealing with our anger. First level is at that moment, right? When we are angry, what do we do? It's very similar to what I just described. Be there, okay? What do I mean by be there? Okay, Instagram just told me our 1 hour is running out. So I end this live session, immediately start another one, okay? So end this live session, start another one immediately. Please join us there. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we're talking about the anger one, okay? So we have two levels of dealing with the anger. One is when at that moment where anger is happening, okay? So the first thing we said is to be there. See, sometimes all that happens is that anger takes over, someone does something, says something, we get triggered, and anger comes, takes control, and releases itself, and suddenly we are back. You're like, oh my God, what did I do? Why did I say that? I didn't want to say that. So we should make sure that this doesn't happen. So what should happen? We should be there, right? We should try and catch anger the first second it arises, where the first thoughts are coming to your mind. Try to be there. Now, initially, you may not be able to stop it. Maybe anger is so strong, the pattern is so strong that still it does what it does. Anger comes and it says certain things, does certain actions till it gets released, the energy gets released. But at least make sure you're there, right? So one scenario is you're not even there, you lose control, anger comes, does certain thing, you're like suddenly, oh my God, why did I do that? Or the scenario which is more preferable is you catch yourself being angry. You're like, oh my God, I have these angry thoughts. My body is getting very angry. Right? Even if you can't stop it, at least be there, observe it, be there in your body when this is happening. Watch it, okay? Now, if it's too strong, you can't do anything about it, well, just by being there, you made it a little bit weaker. Just by being there, observing it. Yes, I'm angry. Not anger is there. I can see I'm angry. Angry thoughts are there. I'm doing something angry. I'm saying something hurtful, but I am there. Now, if it's too strong, well, just be there. But if it's not that strong, try, and especially, anger, it grows exponentially. So initially, when it starts at its root, it's not that strong. There's this moment, next time you get angry, pay attention to this. There is this moment when it's starting that it's weak still. So the tendency is there to express it, but it's not that strong. You can stop it at that point. If you let it go, if you allow it to continue, it becomes so strong, you just have to watch it, right? You can't control it afterwards. But at its root, it's possible to control it. Now, how can I control it? The tendency is there. There are a few things that can help. One thing is to, again, come to the body. I'm not saying suppress it, because if you suppress it, if you feel anger and don't express it, it gets suppressed, it comes back later on, right? I don't know if you must have had an experience like this, right? You're in an argument with someone, you keep trying to be polite. You're angry, but you try not to say anything, keep suppressing it. And then they say another thing, you lose control, and 10 times stronger, you lash out, right? You get angry. So don't suppress. What is the way to deal with this? Again, go to the body, right? The body is always one of the best ways to deal with this, right? So anger comes, you quote it at its root, and then try and see what is the sensation in my body, right? A lot of the time, anger expresses itself here, right? Feel it. Feel the sensations. Be there, feel the sensations. This is what anger feels like in my body, okay? Now, the more you do this, the weaker it becomes. Now, initially, maybe the first few times you may not even be able to stop it. But the more you do this, the weaker it patterns become. Because usually the reason why it's so powerful is that we don't know what hit us. Suddenly we feel like we're overtaken by this monster, does certain things and then goes. But the more you understand it, this is what's happening. My heart is beating. Sometimes in your shoulders you feel it. Sometimes you feel it here. Look in your body and see what are the sensations of anger, and immediately it loses some of its power. So these are some of the things we can do at that moment. But another thing that we need to do once that episode is gone, we don't need to wait till the other episode. We need to go and figure out, how did we learn this pattern of anger? Because what is anger? Anger is a learned behavior. At some point in our life, we learned to deal with conflicts, with threats, with attacks through anger. Okay? So it's a learned behavior. At some point, this is the way we thought we can protect ourselves. So, by going back and figuring out, when did we learn this? How did we create this pattern? And of course, inshallah, we can speak again about this in one other session. There are ways. It's possible, It's steps you can take. It's very straightforward. Don't feel overwhelmed. You look and you try to see, when was it that you formed this pattern? When did you learn to use anger to protect yourself? Okay? And as we do this, one thing which is very important is not to feel blame towards this part of you which gets angry. Because the reason this anger is there in the first place was to protect you. Okay? So although now it's hurting others, it's doing wrong thing, we try to stop it, but we don't blame it. That part of us that thinks it can protect us like this, at some point it didn't know any other way. So you have to be compassionate towards the part of you that through anger tried to protect you. Okay? So this is also very important. And then we go and we see, when was it that I learned to defend myself through anger? And you may even be surprised that, for example, maybe it was when you were hurt. Because, for some people, the time they learn to be angry is they were in a very vulnerable situation as a child, right? Maybe there was a family member who hurt them, or who were abusive to them, or just was rude, maybe not very soft. They felt very vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, what do? Many of us, what we do when we feel so hurt and vulnerable is we look around us and we try to see who is powerful here. And we say, okay, in order to protect myself, I have to be like them. So that's why a lot of children who are hurt, who are abused, may later on become angry. Because when they were vulnerable, when they were so weak, the way they thought they can protect themselves was to look at the most powerful person in the room, say, I have to be like them. And if the most powerful person in the room was an angry person, they learned to be angry. Okay? So if you look at it this way, you realize, oh my God, the reason I started becoming angry was to protect myself. Right? So don't blame the angry part. It was there to protect you. Feel compassionate for it, but you have to unlearn this pattern. Right? Learn how to deal with these situations through more mature ways. At one point, this was the best you could do, but now you can do better. Ways which don't harm you that much. And inshallah, maybe one day we can talk about that more. Let me see if we have other questions. how to deal with the guilty feeling every time a trouble happened to someone we love. See, this feeling of guilt again is very similar to anger, in the sense that at some point in our life we learned this. Okay, either it was the way we interpreted a situation, or maybe someone said something in a moment of anger and we took it on. Now, for example, what can happen, so that's what I'm saying, for every person it's different. So we have to go and try to find the root of when did we learn this, when did we when was it starting for the formation of this belief that I am guilty for what's happening. Now, let me give you an example. Of course, for every person is different, but maybe for someone is that, see, the family was in a difficult situation. The parents are dealing with this trouble. Let's say one of the children in the family is ill. When one of the children is ill, well, everyone is stressed. Everyone's trying to deal with it. Okay? Now, if another sibling, another child comes and expresses its need, right? Imagine the parents are already on the edge. They are overwhelmed with the illness of this one child. Now, if another child comes and expresses a need, a very natural need, something that happens that they may have been so overwhelmed, they're tired. They say, what? Can't you see we're dealing with this? Right? They make it angry, like, your sibling is in this difficult situation and you're asking me for this? For example, something like that. And the child may perceive this behavior as, I am responsible for the problems in this family. Right? A 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old. The way they interpret the world, this, and if that child feels that way, right, then this feeling would be with them even later on. So every time a trouble happens in the family, they feel they're responsible. So we need to go and see, when did we learn this? When did we form this and then heal it? And of course, again, as I said, inshallah, one day we'll speak about how to heal these things. But so guilt is again like this. It's something happened to us and we interpreted the world this way because we didn't know better. We were a child, we were young, or we were hurt, and we interpreted that situation as this was our fault. And when you learn something in a moment when you are so emotional, it stays. Okay? In memory consolidation, that's what they say. When you are emotional and you learn something, or you make a judgment about yourself or about the world, that stays with you and it keeps coming back on and on, right? So if someone broke your heart, if you were in a relationship and they left you, or if you were in a friendship, suddenly without explanation they left, and then if you interpreted that as, I wasn't worthy of friendship, or I wasn't a good partner that they left, if this is how you interpret it, because it's a very emotional situation, this belief will be written inside you, and it will remain with you till you go and heal it, right? It's possible to heal. But as long as you don't heal it, it'll keep coming back in other friendships. You want to start another friendship, but it's written inside you that I'm not worthy of friendship. You lose your self-esteem. You feel unworthy. But of course, you can go and heal it. So inshallah, as I said, another session we'll talk about that. Venting is a good way to deal with frustration, because when we are upset or angry, we tend to swallow it to avoid argument. It's good to vent to someone close to you. That way you can move on. Of course, suppressing is very bad, right? Suppressing is very bad, and venting is also very good to discharge that energy, right? But of course, venting should be a temporary solution, right? Venting is very good to make sure it's not suppressed, but it's ideal as a temporary solution, right? In a moment we're angry, vent. That's beautiful. Discharge the energy. Discharge it so that it's not suppressed. But as a permanent solution, it's best to solve the issue from its root, to unlearn the pattern of anger so that the next time you don't even feel the need to vent. Okay, so venting is great. And of course, sometimes maybe even some people may say, you know what, the only way I know is to suppress. Everyone deals with it a certain way. So it's okay. Once or twice you may have your own way of dealing with something. That's fine. Right? And venting, of course, is much better than suppressing. But again, as I said, it's even better to go and heal the problem from its root so that you don't even need to vent. Right? Life becomes much easier. But yes, as a temporary solution, it can be very important to discharge the energy. Now, and thank you so much for also mentioning this, because I want to also say this with regards to parents who have children. Okay, if you're a parent and your child is feeling angry about something, it's very important that we don't try to force them to not act that out, right? Let's say they're mad at something that happened in that school and they come and they want to tell you, and you may feel like, okay, I need to stop them talking this way because this is not polite. But know that more important than that is to allow your child to release this energy. If anger is not released, that excess energy can lead to a trauma itself. Okay, so as parent, it's very important. If your child comes home and is mad at something that happened at school, even if a teacher said something, your child may come home and start swearing at the teacher. Don't get anxious. Don't get worried. Let them vent out. Let them release that energy. Okay? If they can't do it through words, let them release it that way. Sometimes a physical activity can help them release it. Right? So it's very important for them to feel empty. Let go of all of that. Don't worry about maybe even if they're swearing. Let them empty it. So that's one thing for parents. Another thing is for parents of younger children. You know, sometimes a younger child, let's say 5-year-old, 4-year-old, something may happen to them. Let's say they're riding a bicycle, they fell. Okay, when they fell, the body goes into a danger situation, feels danger. So this is a situation in which if we don't deal with it, it can lead to trauma. Like the child may get scared of riding bicycle forever, right? Now, so when bodies like this, imagine what would happen if, you know, because our body is designed for a different time, right? It's designed for a time where danger meant that you had to escape from an animal. So now even when you fell from a bicycle, that's what your body feels. I need to pump so much energy in this body so it can run. But now all of this excess energy is there, but you're not running away from a lion or something. You just fell from the bicycle. So what you have to help your child do is to let go of this energy, because the body is going to fill up this child with energy, and if we don't deal with it, it's going to turn into a trauma. So if you've paid attention, sometimes you see after an incident like this, your child is shaking, right? If they're shaking, don't try to, for example, hug them and say, no, it's okay, it's okay. When you're hugging them, make sure you hug them loosely. Don't stop the shaking, right? Because when they're shaking, that's their way of releasing the energy which the body has gathered. And it's very important for them to release that energy, okay? And of course, even if at that moment you didn't do this, it's okay. Later on, there are ways to go back to that moment and release that energy through the sensations of the body. But at that moment, it's very important for you to help your child, be there for them. And if they're shaking, it's okay. Let them shake. Let them shake till they finish the energy, but you can loosely hug them. Be there for them. Physical contact is very important. It can be very helpful. Try to bring them in their body, right? Try to ask them questions about their sensations in their body. Don't let them go in their mind. So for example, you can ask, and one thing which is good, because the sensation, if the pain is too much, can be overwhelming. So you can, for example, ask them if they fell from the bicycle, is your leg hurting? Take them there, Let them feel that sensation and then ask a question from another part of the body which is not hurting, right? So how is your shoulder? If you know their shoulder is fine, right? So about the leg which is hurting, let them feel that sensation so the energy is released, but then make a flow by asking them something about another part of the body which is not hurting. How's your shoulder? If you know the shoulder is fine, right? So this way, when they feel the sensation through the body, that it gets released. Now what happens if we don't do this, sometimes the body is feeling this energy, it gets stuck there, right? And later on, the body hasn't expressed itself. So when you ask them to feel the sensation in the body expresses itself, the energy is released. And another thing, again, which I have to mention, is that for many children, the younger especially they interpret the world based on what the parents or the one who is taking care of them feel, right? So if something happens, they still don't make a judgment if this is bad or not. They look at the parent's face, and then if the parent is stressed, they say, oh, something bad has happened. And if the parent is not stressed, they're like, okay, things are fine, right? Their understanding of the world, many cases, is based on the reaction they see in the parent's face. So if, for example, your child falls from the bicycle or something's happening, a terrible moment, right? Before you go and hug them, take a moment, especially if it's not an emergency situation. If it's an emergency, you have to run to them. But if it's not an emergency, take a moment, take a deep breath, make sure you're calm, even if it's a difficult situation. Know that your child is probably going to look into your face, even if you think you're hiding it, the smallest muscle changes, they're going to see that. So take a deep breath, be calm, and then go and hug them, okay? So that we don't transfer stress to them. Sometimes we seek solutions and soothing from others in this world. This can in opposition to trusting in Allah and having patience. Should we seek to share our problem if it feels wrong? Hope. I know some of us feel that way, that maybe I should ask help from Allah. But see, one thing we need to know is that in the same way that if, for example, my hand gets hurt, would I say that don't go to a doctor and seek help from Allah? No. At the end of the day, it is God that cures. Even if I go to a doctor for myself, let's say my hand is broken. But we have this in Islam, right? That God does everything through asbab. If my hand is broken, I'll go to GP, right? If I can't see, I'll go to my optometrist, which I did. In the same way, if I have issues with my thoughts, with my emotions, I go to the person who can help me with that, right? There is nothing wrong with that. This is not going against God. No, God works through asbab. We even have a hadith. In the same way that if the body has an issue, you go to a doctor. If your emotions, if your heart has an issue, if you're spiritual, you go to the person and ask him. That's one thing. Second thing, which is very important, is that the very same God that we want to have trust in, He has actually designed us in a way that we heal when we are in the presence of someone that we love, right? One of the best ways that our body receives the message that we are safe is the presence of another person, right? So this is why a lot of the times they say for a trauma to form, the only thing that happens, it's not a bad event. No, it's bad event and we didn't have someone to either take care of us or support us, right? Let me give you an example. And this is a study that they've done. So this is how we are. So they said if a child at school gets bullied, okay? So a child got bullied in the school. So this is a bad event. But they say often this bullying alone is not the only thing that leads to trauma, right? what happens is that if this child at that moment didn't got the support he or she needed, so the same child, if for example has a circle of close friends that can share that story with, get support, it wouldn't turn into a trauma. Of course, it would be hurtful, it would be sad, but it would stop, that the person would heal and they wouldn't carry this with them in the rest of their life. Right? So this has been even shown that if a person gets bullied but has a close friend, a circle of close friends that they can talk about that, express themselves, receive support, it wouldn't lead to a trauma. Or if not a close friend, if a parent who can understand, knows how to let them, release that, right? So you can see that the very same God that we trust and love has designed us in a way that being in the presence of people that we love and trust is healing for us, right? We heal when we receive love. We heal when we receive someone's trust. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There is nothing wrong with sharing our problems with others. And it's the way that God has designed us. We are social people and we heal in the presence of others. And sometimes even a touch is very powerful. Touch is very powerful. Sometimes our child or our partner may have let's say an episode of anxiety, and a lot of people, we don't know what to say, right? So we don't know what is the right word to say. You say something, it makes it worse. So they say sometimes more important than knowing what to say is to just be there, right? With your soul, right? Even if you don't know what to say, just be there. Say, you know what? I care about you enough to give you my whole attention. Just the presence of another soul next to us with their whole being is very healing, right? And just hold their hand if they allow it, okay? Say, I know you're going through this very difficult anxiety. Let me hold your hand. Is that okay if I hold your hand? And sometimes touch is such a powerful power to calm us down. So if God has designed us this way, there is no shame in asking for help. Right? It's beautiful, actually. It's beautiful. When you forgive someone who has wronged you without an apology, doesn't this teach them to take advantage of your kindness? Not at all. Not at all. See, I said, forgiving someone is one thing. How you deal with them is another thing. Okay? So when I say forgive someone, even if they haven't apologized, what I mean is that don't carry the dirt or the bad action that they did with you. Let go of that. That's all forgiving is. Let go. Do not carry the burden of their act. And I gave you the example of a physical injury, right? If someone comes and God forbid shoots you and there's a bullet in your shoulder, in your arm, okay? Would you say that I'm not going to take this bullet out unless you apologize? If I take this bullet out, you may feel like, okay, he's taking the bullet out, let me shoot him again. No. The first thing you do is you take the bullet out. The same is when someone hurts us. When someone hurts you and you don't let go, you are carrying the bullet here, right? Nothing is happening to them. Something is happening to you, right? When someone shoots you, the first thing you do, take the bullet out. Someone hurts you, take that bullet out. It can be painful in the same way that taking a bullet out is painful. You have to open your hand, bring it out, do stitches, right? So sometimes forgiving is painful. And of course, if we're not ready, that's fine. We can take our time, okay? Take your time, find ways, but ultimately know that this is what you're doing for yourself. But then, this doesn't mean that we just ignore what they did, right? If someone shoots us in the arm, we take the bullet out, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna go. No, they're gonna be taken to court, maybe even prison. In the same way, you can forgive someone, but decide to leave them out of your life, right? If, for example, you see that there's this person who keeps abusing you, forgiving them doesn't mean that pretend like nothing has happened. All forgiving means it's let go of the wound. Don't give them the control to decide for your well-being. But if you see that this person keeps doing it, actually, even for them, it's better if you leave them out of your life, right? So forgiving is not that the same as continuing in the same way. No, talk to them. Confront them. Talk to them, right? But chances are that you're going to get a much better result after you forgive them, right? So even if you want to confront them while you're still hurting, while the bullet is still in your arm, that's not going to be a very rational discussion, right? Imagine someone shoot you, there's a bullet in your arm, and you want to talk to them right now. What is that discussion going to be like, right? But what would you do? Take this bullet out and then talk to them. So forgive them, then talk to them. That is going to be a very much easier discussion to have, right? You're not going to attack them as much, so maybe even they don't get defensive and they apologize. But if you saw that, no, even though I wasn't attacking them, I was very calm, I was very contained, but still they keep repeating this behavior, then leave them out of your life. That's fine. That doesn't contradict with forgiving them, not at all. In fact, for some people, as I said, it's better to leave them. It's better for them so that maybe they wake up. How do we heal the problem after we find the roots? Okay, now this is a very important topic. So inshallah, maybe actually we can talk about it in its own session. So one session we can talk about that on its own. So two things are, but again, because I don't want to leave any question unanswered, I'll say a few lines about it. See, as long as we haven't healed something, it will keep happening, right? If I don't go and heal the time in which I learned to protect myself through anger, I'll keep being angry. Or it could be that I'll keep being anxious. Or my self-worth, I'll keep feeling like I'm not worthy. So we find the root. Once you found the root, okay, so finding the root on its own is not enough. It's the first step. But then, see, they say what happens is that, a hurt, a belief like that, like when someone bullied us or hurt us, or when we felt we're not worthy, this is written. This is formed, right? This is part of our body right now, literally, right? It's formed and it is kept in our body. Now, they say usually with these things, you can't unlearn them just by telling yourself. It's a very difficult thing to undo. But the best time, they say, or some even say the only time that you can unlearn it is when it comes up. So when you're reliving it, right? That's why they say you can only heal it when it comes out. So you think about that moment. Again, the whole experience comes in your body. If it was anger, it comes in your body. If it was hurt, you feel hurt. And at that moment, when you're reliving it, when it comes through your body again, there's a 5-hour window. Sometimes it's even shorter, but maximum is 5 hours. When it opens up, and now you can give yourself what you needed to receive back then, right? And of course, there are different methods there are even different schools of therapy of how to deal with this. Sometimes all we need is to receive the love or support we needed when this was formed. So once we're reliving it, once we feel it, and of course, just feeling it, just thinking about it is not enough. Like, it has to be relived. When you're reliving it, if you receive at that moment what you needed to receive, right? So the memory comes up, and now instead of being associated with that bad incident, now it's associated with this love and support that you receive. So sometimes, especially with easier traumas, this is the way to heal it. You find the source. Once it's relived, you receive the support. Especially, for example, if you have a loved one in your life, they can help you a lot. But sometimes it's not as easy as that. Sometimes a therapist knows what to help, how to help you in that situation. Okay, what you need to receive at that moment when you found the source. Inshallah, as I said, on that day we'll talk about it. There are very different methods, but ultimately the root of it is this: you find the source of it, and you expose yourself to that. Once you relived it, this time you receive something which you didn't receive back then. Right? So instead of associating that with that bad memory or that bad incident, now you make a new association with trust, with the sense of worthiness, or with love, depending on what that is. You give your body the signal that we are safe. And as I said, this depends on the trauma, on what is it. And inshallah, we'll talk about it in another session with more details. A parenting series would be amazing, inshallah. Yes, definitely, inshallah. Okay, seems like these are the questions, and I think we're going really late. Yes, it's 11:40, so maybe inshallah we can continue next week. Thank you so much to all of you for staying with us. I know it's quite late. Sorry for talking for so much. I hope that it was beneficial. And inshallah, we'll continue next week. So just a very quick summary of what we discussed today. By feeling responsible for our own well-being, we are not saying that we are to be blamed for anything. No. All we are saying is that we want to claim the ability to respond to the situations. We want to be able to take control of our life. We want to be able to take control for our well-being, so that our well-being doesn't depend on how others treat us. If they treat us well, then perfect. But even if they don't, we still want to feel good. We still want to feel happy and loved and worthy. And inshallah, that's what we're trying to talk about in this series. And inshallah, see you next week. The video of this session also will be uploaded on YouTube tomorrow, inshallah, and the Non-Snoozers channel if you want to share with your friends. Take care of yourself, and know how much you're loved by God, by me, by the universe. You're so important. You're such a beautiful soul. You deserve and you're worthy of love and well-being and happiness. And inshallah, I hope if you don't even feel it now, very soon you would feel that. Take care of yourself. You mean so much to me.